Welcome to the Jameson Files. I'm your host, Carrie Weber, and today we're going to be talking about not only things that you need to be thinking about as dental practice owners today, but how to plan appropriately for your future with intention. And so I'm thrilled to have a guest with me, Jonathan Moffat of Aligned Advisors. Now, for those of you that may not know about Aligned Advisors, I certainly want to give Jonathan a chance to talk about that. But in a nutshell, this is for those of you that want to be thinking more strategically and intentionally for your financial future, and for all of the resources and people that could be a benefit to you to support you to have the career that you really want and are looking to achieve. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carrie. I'm happy to be here.
I got to be a guest on Jonathan's podcast. We've started to get to know each other this year, and I'm really happy that we have been introduced and connected, because I am very curious and very interested in a lot of the things that you and your team do to support dental practices. In fact, when we were prepping for this session, I think I have too many things I want to talk about. So we're gonna have
Good.
to pick and choose for them. So maybe have you back for another one. First of all, let's start at the beginning, Jonathan, in terms of you consider your company, you're the founder and CEO, and you built this company from a structure that you call a family office. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the type of advisor support that Jonathan and his team provide, can you share a little bit, Jonathan, about what that means and how you serve dental practices across the country?
Yeah, happy to. And thanks for having me on here, Carrie. I think it's important too to kind of just, if we can, I think it's important to just kind of even back up a little bit more, because a question that I always get, I'm sure you do too, is like, why do you work with dentists, right? And then on top of that, it's like, well, what do you do? Tell me what you do and what's your what's your why, right? I think that's
Mm.
for a lot of us, that's really interesting, right? It's an interesting piece of why do we do what we do? Why do we show up every day? Why do we wake up in the morning as visionaries and entrepreneurs and founders, right? Why do we
Yeah.
put ourselves through everything that we put ourselves through?
Right.
And so for me, it started with both my dad and my grandfather. I know you and I have a few parallels here, right?
You do.
And my grandfather was an orthodontist, very successful. He actually had multiple practices, 7, 8 practices. I think for a long time I said he's had 5 or 6. Talking to my dad, we recently had a family reunion a few weeks ago, and my dad's he's like, no, he had like 9 or 10. And I was like, I had no clue. He was a true entrepreneurial orthodontist, and he was
Yeah.
really good at what he did. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s, when multiple practices really wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say.
yeah, and he was really one of the people out front of that, and super sharp guy. I wish I got to know him a little bit, but he passed away when I was I was probably 22, 23. And so I really didn't, I knew him, but not as well as I would have liked to. I would have loved to have, had him around now to be like, Grandpa, what did, and just learn more about what he did,
Yes.
because he was such a great practice runner and owner, and just really smart. But on the personal side, he made a lot of pretty devastating mistakes. Had to file bankruptcy twice, lost a lot of money, just making kind of emotional and just decisions and deciding on the fly. And ultimately
Yeah.
in 1994 had a heart attack, which forced him to stop practicing orthodontics. If you weren't a general dentist, if you were a specialist endodontist, any specialist, there is this belief that your practice wasn't worth anything because all your patients were referral based.
Mm.
Right. So what are we buying? I'm buying
Mhm.
maybe some old equipment and taking over your lease, but what really am I buying? It sounds crazy today, because today, obviously, specialty practices are worth a lot of money today, right? There's a lot of people that love to have those, but back then there was just kind of this belief of it wasn't really worth anything. And so when
Yeah.
he had that heart attack, he literally walked away from his practices without getting anything, not a penny from any of those practices. As I was my freshman and sophomore year in college, I, unfortunately had the opportunity, I don't know, opportunity, but saw my grandparents, living in basically poverty for the remaining couple years of their lives. And that left a really strong impact on me. I wanted to help people avoid making those same mistakes. And
Mm.
so my dad was kind of your traditional financial advisor, wealth advisor, and that's the direction I went down. And one of my first, actually my first dental client I had, he wanted to buy his building here in California. And so I said, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And we started to go on the path of helping him buy his building. He needed to liquidate some of his investment accounts for a
Mhm.
down payment on this building. And so I said that was a great idea. And the company that we were working for the investments, I got a call from the manager and he's like, Jonathan, what's this 300 and something $1,000 leaving the account? And I said, oh, this is a client of ours buying this building. He's like, well, you're like, we're going to lose fees on that money. Right. And I was like, yeah, okay. It didn't cross my mind. I just knew this is a good thing for the client, but I guess if we are, and then he's like, well, if you cost us fees, that's a problem. We're gonna have to put our relationship under, like, we're gonna have to like have another conversation around this, right?
Mm.
So I remember hanging up that call and walking out of my dad's office and being like, dude, what is this? Like, this is
Yeah.
actually a good thing for our client. And I'm like potentially going to get in trouble because I'm helping, right? And I just it left such a bad taste in my mouth. I remember I went home, I was newly married, told my wife, I'm like, I don't want to be in this business anymore. If I can't do
Mm.
what's in the best interest of my clients, I don't want to be in this business anymore. And so I was going to leave the business. And as I was kind of going through my personal exploratory, what do I want to do with my life? Right. What's life all about? Meaning of life, kind of, journey. Right. I read the book, Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
A lot of people have read this. And what a lot of people may not know is when Simon first released that book, you could pay an extra, it wasn't a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money, maybe $50 a month or something like that. I don't remember what it was, but you
Mhm.
could be a part of this like mastermind and Simon would actually show up on these calls every month and he would talk to people. And so that was the beginning journey of me trying to really figure out what I wanted to do. And that's where this family office concept really came to light. It's not a new concept. It's been around since, I think, the Rockefellers are the first known like family to institute a family office. But what it's been typically reserved for is the ultra wealthy,
Mhm.
because it's really like attorneys, accountants, actuaries, insurance, investment advisors, all working for one family, right? So when, I'll use a dumb example. Jerry Jones wants to buy the Dallas Cowboys,
Right.
right? He has a team that will look at that deal and go, this is a good deal or this isn't a good deal. And they'll negotiate the deal and they'll line up the financing and they'll help him with the tax incentives and they help him, right? They do all that for him. And he just sits in a room and they present everything to him. He goes, looks great. Let's do it. And then the team
Mhm.
goes and does it, right? And so that model I love because it brought proactive planning, it brought team collaboration, which just doesn't happen in our industry, right?
Mhm.
Your accountant is not talking to your attorney. Your attorney is not talking to your insurance person. Your insurance person is not talking to your financial investment, unless that person's also selling you your insurance, right? Which is also
Right.
very common. They're not talking to your real estate broker who's not talking to your banker. And what ends up happening is the doctor, in our case, is the one in the middle doing all of that. And so when a client of ours wants to go buy a practice or a building, which a lot of our clients do, they have to be the ones that are like, okay, I need 3 years tax returns. I need personal financial statements. I need your bank statements. I need your financials. I need your tax returns. Like they need all this list of stuff. And then you're just like, great. On top of that, I know Sally at the front desk was asking me for a raise. And I also know my, XYZ rep wants this and this, right? And so it gets added to that pile of things that we need to do. And
Right.
then it either doesn't get done or it gets done late at night, which then pulls us away from quality of life. Right now we're spending late hours instead of with the family or doing things we want to do work. And it just, all this helps contribute to this. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of visionaries, a lot of our clients, I think like a lot of or I should say potential clients, these doctors are feeling burned out. Right.
Mhm.
And it's kind of this, it's not, everyone wants to kind of pinpoint it on one thing. And it's not one thing. I think it's a culmination of a lot of these just, things that just fall on us as visionaries. Cause at the end of the day, if we're the owner of the business, the buck stops with us. Right.
Right.
And there's not a lot of people I feel like that really feel like they have a lot of support on that side. And so that is our why. That's why we exist. One of our core values is our team is to our clients, our employees are our clients team, right? Like
Mm.
take over the implementation for our clients. We reach out to the banker, the insurer. We have those collaborative phone calls before anything gets presented to the client. We have a comprehensive checklist of over 200 checkpoints that we're reviewing, covering everything from insurance to taxes to legal to financial to you name it. Over 200 checkpoints, the most comprehensive one in the industry that we're going through every year for every client, right? And what that does, and it starts with this conversation around the roadmap conversation, which is one of the first conversations we have with the client and their spouse or significant other to talk about their goals and their values. One of my favorite conversations to have. That what happens is what's really cool is that you go to get to the top of that when you go, Carrie, if you didn't have to worry about money, you had all the money that you knew you needed to have to do the things you wanted to do, to live the life you wanted to live, what's important about that? How would that impact your life? And what's really cool about this, Carrie, and what my why is ultimately at the end of the day, why I get up every day, why I talk to doctors, why I come on podcasts is because the answer to that question. And the answer is, Jonathan, if I didn't have to worry about money, if I knew I had everything I needed to fund my goals, to do what I want to do, to achieve my goals, what I would do is I would then give back. I would go create a legacy. I would want to give back to my community, give back to my church, give back to some humanitarian project. I would want to teach that and pass that on to my children and my grandchildren, right? And so that's my why. If we can create more people that want to give back to our community, we're going to create a better community and it's going to be a better place for everyone.
We do have a lot of parallels in terms of our history in our work with the family connections all the way down. But also I really love this roadmap piece. Number one, talking about what you have done in this collaborative effort of resources and expertise that you bring to the table for your clients is so important, because I always tell doctors, there are people and companies and resources that you need to engage in that help you to grow and thrive and be successful in that way. And then there are some that you need to have that protect you and make sure that you're doing things in the right way and keep you safe and protected along the way. And so many of those resources and people you bring to the table help with a little bit of both of those, right? A lot of the things that I really perked up when we talked historically are the things that you do proactively for the sake of your clients, that more often than not, the stories are reactive in nature, kind of like your grandfather, oh my gosh, the things that I didn't know to prepare for. The things, even my own father, who had to retire because of a disability. And fortunately, he had people in place and resources to help him and he had to do it fairly quickly. The things that he had to do that so many people are blindsided by or not prepared for. And in that you help proactively plan for a healthy, happy life and future, no matter what may come to pass along the way. But you started with this roadmap, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because this feels like a really big parallel as like what we do with clients in Jameson, because the only way we can make the right decisions and lay the correct groundwork in our businesses and our practices is if we know where we're really wanting to go and what's most important to us. Otherwise, we're making decisions based on the wrong things. And so talk to me a little bit about this roadmap, how this came to be, and how this plays such a pivotal part in your journey with your clients and the decisions that you make with them and the things that you help them prepare for.
Yeah. So, again, if you kind of take the traditional financial wealth management kind of like, anything personal finance model, it's very focused around numbers and what's happened in the past, right? So again, you sit down with your CPA, they're going to go, how was your year last year? Looks like you made more money. Hey, good news, bad news. Good news, you made more money. Bad news, you owe more taxes, right? And by the way, tomorrow's April 15th and you got to write a check for $100,000 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew that didn't ever have any interest with me. Even when I started, I started my career working again, kind of more in the traditional model. I worked for Adventist Health. So I worked for this Adventist Health hospital group of hospitals here in Southern California. And I would go in, I would meet with the nurses and the providers, and I would help them, and I'd sit down and it helped them plan for their future. Right. And I loved the personal side of it. Right. I loved learning, getting to know them, getting to know their stories. A lot of them were, had immigrated here from like the Philippines and were working here and for a better life. And right. A lot of those sweet nurses from the Philippines were like, Jonathan, if I just have this, which in comparison to what our clients want is like nothing. They're like, I want to go build schools in the Philippines. I want to go build churches in the Philippines. I want to go. And that really resonated with me because
Mhm.
I think at the end of the day, for most of us, the reason you go into business in the first place, I would almost guarantee, Carrie, if you and I were standing on the stage in front of all of our clients and go, why did you become a dentist?
Yeah.
Almost everyone is going to go, I became a dentist because I wanted to help people. Now that
Mhm.
reason of what or why they want to help people is going to be different for everyone, which that to me is the fun part of getting to have that conversation is let's figure, like, I want to talk about your why. A lot of people have goals. We got to have these goals in our head. Oh, I'd like to do this or like to do that. But the roadmap, we get specific. What's a tangible goal you have that requires money and planning to achieve? That's the question we
Yeah.
ask, right? And you go, oh, I want to, okay, a really common one, financial freedom. Great. Let's talk about that. What does that mean? Does it mean you're
Mhm.
not working? Does it mean you're working less? Does it mean you're not doing clinical anymore? Does it mean you've stepped away from the chair? Does it like, what is that actually? And for the first time, they're actually with their spouse or significant other having this conversation at a level that it goes beyond just, oh, at some point, I want to stop practicing. What
Yeah.
dollar amount do you want to have per month or per year? By what month, day, and year do you want to achieve that, be in that place, right? So it's very specific, kind of having that conversation and putting parameters and structure around what
Mhm.
for most of us, again, as entrepreneurs and visionaries, we just kind of have in our mind as like, well, I think this is what I'd want to do, right?
Yeah. I love it because, I mean, this speaks to me because I cannot tell you how many times I talk to doctors and they are putting the cart before the horse all the time. They're comparing and looking at other people, other practices, should I do this? Should I do that? And they're looking at other people's version of success and trying to find themselves in that.
Yeah, it's a big
And
one.
so many times I have to say, let's pump the brakes here because before I'm going to give you any guidance on, option A versus option B and how to do that, I need to know what it is you really want. What do you want? Not what Dr. Moffat down the street's doing, not what all of these doctors in this organization say to do. What does right look like and feel like to you? What are you wanting to ultimately accomplish for your future? Let's make decisions based on that, not chasing
Yeah,
everybody else's version of what seems like the correct model. And I feel like that's what you're doing in your lane at the same time is pump the brakes, everybody. Let's talk about what that means to you because your financial freedom question and example is such a perfect one
right. Well,
because
and it
financial freedom means
means
something
something
so
different to
different.
everybody. Yes,
Yes.
100%. I guarantee you, if you and I said what our definition of financial freedom is, it's going to be different, right?
Yes.
It's going to be the same kind of general idea, but there's going to be the timing that like is going to be very different. And what's interesting is, retirement kind of, a lot of people don't, again, I do a lot of these conversations, of these roadmap conversations. I don't remember the last time someone said retirement. Retirement, I feel like it's kind of maybe like our parents, our
Mm,
grandparents retired, right? Most of us as visionaries, we've got this that we have a really hard time shutting off, right? Like where our brain's always racing, we're always thinking, we're always, especially when it comes to the business. And there's all this research now that says if you don't have anything, if you stop working, if you're a dentist or a business owner and your whole life is your business and you stop working and then you have nothing, your lifespan is significantly
mhm,
shorter than
mhm,
if you can do something right. And again, I'll just use both of my grandparents as this example. My one grandfather had a heart attack. It wasn't a major heart attack, but it was a heart attack. It was enough to where he had to stop practicing. He had
mhm,
nothing after that. His life was his practice. He lived another, I think 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. I can't remember exactly. I think heart attack was in 94. I think he passed away in 2003 or 4, I think.
mm,
So, pretty short period of time after that. Versus my mom's dad, also a doctor, by the way, totally the opposite, had a team, had planning, only invested in things he understood, bought land, very successful, has left a massive legacy, 97 years old, still alive. I go back and see him every couple months. We play dominoes, we watch football, right? Like very active, lives on his own, on his ranch, right? But it's
Mhm.
because when he retired, also 1996 or 97, went on a church service mission as a medical doctor in the Philippines for a year and a half with my grandmother. Like his life had purpose after,
Yes.
right? Came back and got involved in ranching, which was just that was always his passion to begin with. And so that's part of that. That has to be a part of that conversation as you look past, like, okay, you don't want to practice dentistry, you can't practice dentistry forever, but what do you enjoy doing? Are there aspects of dentistry that
Yes.
you enjoy that you could be passionate about that maybe you could do? I get that dentistry is a very physically demanding profession. If you're a lot of neck, back, hand injuries, right? Joint injuries. Okay, but maybe you enjoy mentoring, training, maybe you enjoy the business aspect. So there are things you can enjoy now if you start to design what that future and that planning around those concepts. Now again, it just kind of creates that longevity of being able to go beyond what maybe we thought. And I love what you said about, kind of like the traditional conversation, because for a lot of financial professionals, the conversation revolves around things that really are out of our control. What did the market
Mhm.
do? What are interest rates going to do? What is it? And it's like we don't have control over that. But what we
Mhm.
do have control over is our practice, how we show up every day. What are we going to, how are we going to be proactive to be able to have that appropriate planning? And I'm sure you and I would agree here. And I'm not trying to set you up if you don't agree, say I don't agree. But in my opinion, and I think you share this opinion, the doctor's best investment, their best asset that they have is their practice.
Yeah.
And so if they're not working with a team that's aligned, right?
Yeah.
Jameson and aligned, like in going, hey, your best investment is back into your practice. If you need to improve systems and processes, if you need to give Carrie and her team a call, because that's where you need to be investing.
Mhm.
I truly believe at my core, if your doctor comes to me and goes, I have $50,000, where should I invest it? And if their practice isn't optimized and profitable, 100%
Mm.
of the time, I'm going to say, you need to invest it back in your practice, because
Yeah.
that's going to be your best asset that you should be investing. And again, you're not going to generally get that advice from other financial professionals, because there's no monetary benefit to them by saying invest it back into your practice. In fact, a lot of times they're losing money on that, right? On that.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's another piece I want to just circle back around on the roadmap, which
Yeah.
is there's the goals part, which is really good and power and important to go in deep and get specific. But the conversation we had before that is actually one of my favorite conversations. It's called the values conversation.
Mhm.
And the reason we started having this conversation is because when you look at how are people that are successful at setting goals and achieving those goals, what's the pattern that they follow? And there's a very specific pattern of people that are high achievers that set goals and consistently achieve those goals and even outperform those goals. And
Mhm.
one of them is they attach meaning, deep meaning and significance to those goals. And the value staircase is that conversation. It's the conversation around what's important about money, about your business, about success, to you at the core, what's important. And Roy Disney, Walt's brother, has a saying that I love. And he says, because when your values are clear to you, decision making becomes easier.
Yes.
And so when we have that clarity around values, when we're faced with a decision around, do I want to do this or this? We go, well, my values, what's important to me is this. So that's going to help me pull, right? The example I always give is, if one of your core values is spending time with family, giving back to community, having more time to invest in others, if you have a goal that's going to pull you away from that, there's probably a probability you're not going to achieve that goal, because every time you go down the path of wanting to try and work on that goal, you're going to feel a pull and a tug on the opposite direction, because it contradicts a core value that you have.
Right.
And so one of the benefits of the roadmap conversation is they get to see, and we get to have a conversation around, are your values aligned with your goals? And if they
Yeah.
are, you're gonna have a much higher probability of achieving those goals.
We talk about values too, Jonathan. Shocker. And we talk about how important it is to tie those with your team.
Mhm.
And to have, not only do they need to have their advisors and all of those resources aligned to them, but they need to have that team in the dental practice aligned. And I just let you talk about goals, you talk about strategic planning, you talk about values, you talk, all of those pieces that talk about the why behind the what. And all of that is so important, and taking it to your entity, which is that personal, the personal piece of our careers, but also all of that also goes over into the team. So as you just said,
Right.
the most valuable thing they have is their practice, and the people within the practice are going to help them determine just how valuable that practice can be. And so when you are clear about where you're going, what you want, what's most important, what those values are, why you do what you do, it's important that you also communicate that to the team, and that the decisions we make, the people I hire, the people I keep, the reason we train, the reason we do
Yeah.
things that we do, the things we invest in into this practice, all need to support that why and those values and the where we're going and what we do. And this is just such a great example of, I think it's a piece that a lot of doctors and dental practice owners ignore because we think we can fix everything with our clinical skills.
Yeah.
We pour all of our time and study into the clinical CE and development, and what they fail to realize is they're considering what are really optimal business strategy and business acumen to be soft skills, and they're not. I mean, this is it. Like, you're helping them. I mean, you literally call it a roadmap. Build the map of how to get yourself from where you are now to where you ultimately want to be. And if you don't know that, you're just throwing darts on the wall, like hoping
Yeah.
this works. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
your guess is as good as mine. But when you think of it from the kind of structure that you create, that creates an entirely new experience of, like, let's focus on the important pieces, so that we're not just going day after day working on putting out fires, basically,
Yeah.
until you wake up one day and you never had a plan, and now your life's upended for one reason or another. But having someone like you creating this plan with them and then supporting them with the resources and the people necessary. Wow.
Well, yeah,
Impressive.
and we'll come back to that, but I want to tie something, because I think you're bringing up a really, really important, and I mean, you're in the space all day, so you see it, but it's something that gets overlooked all the time, and that is, culture. And so I would say, like, the two of, like, the hottest topics that have been in our industry since COVID are, how do I attract and retain good team members, right?
Yep.
This is like everyone wants to talk, all the conferences you go to, this is what they want to talk about, right?
Hmm.
Well, if you want to know, Carrie just gave you the answer. If you sit down, and I will say this, like, literally, I will say this with, like, I used to be a faculty for Henry Schein's Dental Business Institute. We would go, we'd sit, and they'd go, how do I attract and how do I keep my associates? And I've got these. I was like, number one, you don't need to necessarily spend more money. Take a few minutes, sit down with them and go, what are your goals? What are your professional goals? Where do you want to be in 3 years or 5 years? What are some of your personal goals? What are
Yep.
some, right? For some of you, probably a lot of you don't know, I used to own 8 practices, right? So don't own them anymore. I used to own 8 practices. We built it from 1 to 8. And I remember having this conversation. I would take my doctors out and to, like, lunch every
Hmm.
month, and I'd go, where do you want to be? What are your goals? What do you want to, right? And how can we help you get there? And what's important about that? I remember we had who ended up being our regional manager. She was just our office manager in one of our offices. I said, what are your goals? She's like, Jonathan, my mom immigrated here from Mexico. No one in my family has ever made more than, $60,000 a year. I want to be the first person in my family to make 6 figures.
Yeah.
And I was like, done. When do you want to do that? In 3 years? Done. Wrote it down, wrote it out. Carrie, she hit that goal, I think, in less than 3 years. I'll never forget, ever. It's literally burned in my mind, pulling up to the practice, seeing her brand new red Mercedes-Benz with the license plate that said dental on the back, sitting
Love it.
in one of the offices. And it seriously put the biggest smile on my face, because I was like, she did it. And she's gone on to way exceed those goals now. Super successful, right? And so I think it's so easy as visionaries for us to and the founders to get lost in the day-to-day, and to
Hmm.
lose that sight of, why did we do this in the first place? It was to create positive impact and give back to these people that are in our lives, whether that's our patients, whether that's our team members. But because the minute we walk through that front door, and again, I've been there. I've literally sat in the parking lot outside of one of my dental practices being like, oh, I don't want to go in there. I know if
Mhm.
I'm going to go in there, I'm going to get hit with all these questions and there's going to be these problems. And I know these two people were fighting earlier and this person wants a raise and this person. And I literally remember sitting there and be like mustering up the courage to be like, all right, I'm going to go in there and put my bulletproof vest on and I'm going to go in there and take it.
Yeah.
Right. But you can also change that. And
Yeah.
one of the best ways to change that is just sit down with each of those people, those team members that you want to attract or retain and be like, we're talking about some of your goals, right?
Mhm.
We have people here in our organization. Now, if you walked into their offices, you'd see a vision board up on their wall of what they want to
Mhm.
accomplish professionally, personally, and we talk about that. We have those conversations, and how can we help you get there? And let's build that. And I remember those things. I have team members that go, "How did you remember that?" We had that conversation over dinner a year ago, and I'm like, because it's important to me as the founder. I
Yeah.
want you to improve your personal. I want you to improve your life. I want you to achieve your goals. Like that's important to me and I care about that. And so I bring it up consistently with them, right? So I think you have that opportunity. We all have that opportunity as founders and again and as the visionaries of our businesses to really make that a priority and have those conversations with our people. And I can tell you those conversations are going to go a lot farther than, hey, we hit our goals, everyone gets an extra $50 this month.
Yeah. What do you call it? The values steps?
Staircase.
Value staircase.
Yeah.
Values staircase.
Yeah.
I think it's so it's such a visual. I mean, just thinking about it, I mean, I can see it in my mind. We're dancing around the same message really is because if you don't know where you're wanting to take things, if you don't know what's most important, if you've never truly clearly put that down on paper, and if you couldn't sit here, if you were another screen next to Jonathan and I, and we asked you that, if you couldn't tell us right then what those things are, that's where you need to start because every decision, and I'm living proof of this as a business owner that bought an existing business that had its own, lifespan before me at the helm. Those pieces, as you said, like those are the deciding factors of where you're going to take things, what you need to do, what you're going to say yes to, what you're going to say no to, what you're going to change, what you're going to keep. And that has to be where it starts because if you don't know, how is your team supposed to know?
Right.
And if you don't know what's most important, how do you know you're even building for your future in a way that's right for you? You don't. So you're just simply in your firefighter gear going out or your bulletproof vest, Jonathan, going out every day, just hoping for the
Right.
best, and hope is not a strategy. So
Right.
I just love it. There's so much that we are parallel on, as you say, like, that's very in sync. I know that this is a starting point. That roadmap piece is a starting point for everything that you do at Aligned Advisors. So is that what people need to do to start to reach out with you? Tell me how they learn
Yeah.
more about Aligned Advisors and what that step looks like.
Yeah. So again, I'm no different than, you and many of our clients, right? Like I kind of shared a little bit about our why. My purpose, at the core is number one, want to avoid watching my grandparents go through what they went through. I was like, I'm on a mission to help as many people avoid that as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next kind of like to take that even deeper was once we started having these roadmap conversations, I started noticing a pattern, which was once people get to a point where they know that their stuff they're all taken care of, then they want to give back. Oh, what a cool experience. We get
Mm-hmm.
to help more people give back, right? So the first step is that roadmap conversation. It's complimentary. There's no fee for it, there's no obligation. It's 60 minutes. It's you and your spouse or significant other. You don't even need to have anything prepared. You show up on a Zoom, literally just like this. I share my screen. We go through the conversation. I ask you some questions. You're going to know the answers to all of them. At the end of it, I go, here's your roadmap. If you have any questions for us, or you want to know how we work, this is how we work. But if there's not a fit or it's not the right time, or I think Carrie, when you and I were talking earlier, is like sometimes if it's a young doctor and they're just getting started, I may say, hey, listen, this is a great exercise to go through as a roadmap. It's going to give you good purpose, but your money's better spent on investing back in your practice or whatever, right? Like go back and have this conversation with Carrie because if it's between investing in our services or that, you're better off to invest in the practice. Once the practice is up and running, like we're here, right? We're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We have lots of free information. We're rolling out a software, a very more simplified. So there's still going to be some value there. Software that we're rolling out. So yeah, the roadmap conversation is one we love having with everyone. Like I said, it's complimentary. They can reach out to our website, alignedadvisors.com. They can email me, J Moffat, just the letter J, and Moffat, my last name, at alignedadvisors.com. They can schedule that. Again, it's complimentary, no obligation there. And we love having that conversation with everyone. I think something else you had talked about, and I'll just, kind of just want to bring back circle, was with when, again, it kind of goes to the overwhelm of, and why I think a lot of us as visionaries, a lot of our doctors feel surprised. You talk about proactive planning and like getting out ahead of it, right? And no one wants that call saying, hey, you owe this much money in taxes, or, hey, I'm thinking about selling my practice next year. What should I do? Or next month, or I just sold my practice. I was talking to someone on my podcast actually a couple of days ago. And afterwards we were talking, they just had this huge sale of their business. And he's like, I wish I would have known to talk to you before I sold, because he's like, I just wrote this massive amount of money in taxes and there wasn't any proactive planning. And right. So there's so much to be, as you know, on the proactive side, where if you're organized, if you have all of your moving parts and pieces simplified and organized, if you're meeting on a regular basis, we meet with clients a minimum of every 4 months at a minimum. And those conversations are always happening about the future, right? Tax projections instead of this is what you owe, right? Lots of proactive comments. When do you want to, if you start planning your retirement, like I want to sell my practice in 5 years as opposed to in a year, there's a lot more you can do. Cause again, it goes back to how I think we work hand in hand. It's like, well, if you increase your revenue, increase your EBITDA, call Carrie, have them put these in place, increase your revenue, increase your EBITDA, your practice is going to be worth more. Right.
Right.
And so it's that proactive planning that I think really, it's something we all kind of, it's like something we just say, but actually do it. It's not that hard. It's just working with a team of people that work as a team that actually have it built into their process of being proactive, of looking at those solutions, alternatives, to maybe like, well, I'm so close to retirement, I don't think I can afford to retire. Well, again, find out if you can, or what does that look like before you kind of draw those conclusions or make that assumption.
Yeah, I love it. When's the best time to start? Now's good.
Yeah.
It's never too late to get on track and start to be proactive in your practice, with your team, and in your life. And so I love what you and the Aligned Advisors teams bringing to the table, Jonathan. And thank you for spending time with me to talk about some of that. And so for all of you in the Jameson Files community, if you are interested in what Aligned Advisors could do for you, or what that even means, that roadmap experience, it's complimentary. My gosh, I think that would be such a valuable use of your time to spend that with Jonathan and his team to get some clarity around where you want to take things for your future. And so I go find them on alignedadvisors.com. And Jonathan, you're the best. Thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me on. Thanks, everyone.
It's my pleasure. And thanks to all of you for joining us for another episode. Be well, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.